then
Mm. Hello. Greetings. Mm.
nice to see you all. Mm, hoping you're well.
Look at the other pages of beings or yogis. Hey. Yeah, very good to see you. Japan. Hello. Mm.
Hey, let's sit together for a little while. So, as usual, letting the eyes come to close, orienting the attention into a more receptive relationship with all that is unfolding, receiving sounds, visual impressions, smells, tastes, sensations throughout the body, the arising, passing of thoughts, emotions. Just recognizing there's not a need to fabricate, construct, reach out, create. All of these phenomena are happening on their own, arising because of conditions, existing in their various qualities, dependent upon those conditions, and changing, dissipating, passing away. As the conditions that support them do the same. All that we need to work with, all that we need to develop these beautiful qualities of mind, of caring, of wisdom and insight, rise and pass on their own without our needing to conjure, manipulate. It is in part their out of our control nature that purifies the heart, mind, causes strain, but also causes understanding. And if we're willing to observe and try to understand just the phenomena that are arising and passing in the body, in the body-based sense doors, in the heart mind itself. And yet we look for stability, sanctuary elsewhere. Mind wanders, squirms around, strains in trying to control, clinging, rejecting, wrestling with what's happening, or ignoring it, wandering elsewhere. And while we may recognize at times the folly in that, it's still happening in the present moment, wanting, straining, resisting, imagining. Those are all present moment phenomena that we can observe, weave into our practice. Not external, not to be rejected. In some ways, we can see the wanting, not wanting, all of the delusion as part of what creates the structure of our path. If we're willing to observe it, connect with it honestly, the nature of thought, wanting, emotion, just as much as we try to observe the nature of physical sensation, other sensory experience. And so we try to commit to one primary field of attention. Maybe it's the field of sound, tone, vibration at the ear door, coming and going. Maybe it's the whole body seated, the sensations happening throughout this realm of physical experience, momentary, changing. Or a more narrow area in that broader field. Where the hands are making contact with the body, or in the area around the abdomen where we can notice the often very subtle sensations of the motion of the breath. Just receiving, connecting, observing, rising pressure, strain, tension, release, increasing pressure, subtle sensations in between. Just that simple, not making this more complicated than it needs to be. Receiving body sensations, observing them change, for receiving sound, observing them rise and pass away. And of course, the mind wrestles, wanders, tries to find stability in its insistence on ourself, on some idea, some opinion. Watch the mind craft structure, a form. Watch it disintegrate. You can watch the mind feel relief in that letting go. Or anxiety in the loss of a fiction of stability. And we just know those things as they are: wanting, anxiety, relief, construction. Arising and passing, being born, passing away. Watch the attention waver. Watch it settle in to the simplicity of the breath, the body, sound. Anything that arises can be braided into our practice, woven in, folded in. Deepening our understanding of the nature of all of this. Simply through observation, slowly, carefully, patiently, gently, courageously. Nice to sit with you all. So we have some time today for questions. If anyone has any about your practice, about the instructions. Michelle gave a talk last week. Have not yet been able to listen to it, but folks have questions about that. We have some time. Just anything happening in your practice or spiritual conundrums we may be able to help with. We're happy to take some time. And so the best way to let us know that you have a question is at the bottom of the Zoom screen. You can click on the button that says raise hand, or type into the chat, type to me that you have a question and I can call on you, or raise your actual physical hands. We can see that usually. Hi, Kate. Let's see. Can you unmute there? Great.
Okay.
Think I'm finding a lot of fear, doubt, and resistance, and it becomes all like solidify. I didn't notice that before. But I think I'm just afraid of like uncovering more dukkha. um yeah, a lot of resistance to practice, and I mean formal practice. I think I found a lot of ways to just like incorporate into different ways to practice over the years, and which is very helpful. um yeah, and I'm trying to find my way back into kind of more formal practice. And yeah, I'm afraid of, because it's powerful. Like I I know that this practice is so powerful, and I'm afraid of that, I think. Yeah, I think that's my report.
Just to clarify, when you said like you hadn't noticed it before, like which part is it? The sense of them kind of like congealing that you hadn't kind of noticed, or just that it's your sense of kind of why it's happening, or
I think just the resistance and fear towards formal practice, I think. And with that, I think congealing is also clear. That's new, but yeah.
I mean, I think one of the neat things about like kind of checking in over time is that rhythm, or you can see, you get a sense of these like the different currents. There's like what's happening on the top, and then what's happening, like there are different currents on the different layers of the ocean, and these rhythms of kind of things coming together and things falling apart and things feeling more steady and things feeling more shaky. And, um, it doesn't, just thinking of the arc of the last few months, it doesn't surprise me that you can sort of observe some degree of that, of like kind of going through shaky times and then things getting, there was a period of kind of, just things feeling kind of more solid and more confident and more and dropping in like a very deep way. And then that that does somehow, that the way the path unfolds, it tends to be that when you have a bigger kind of opening, that will often notice a more visceral sort of contraction also, and I think that sense of the kind of intuition of what it is really valuable. Yeah, sometimes you have to be careful of not over solidifying that either, but it doesn't mean it's wrong. It's just yeah, it's like, okay, you have a sense of something that sounds probably very likely, that the mind gets like comfortable with the degree of openness and non-meddling, and then at some point that doesn't become comfortable and there's a desire to kind of like re-solidify, and that fear and doubt and worry, those are very tried and true ways of solidifying. uh, the- we also have the sides of ourselves, or there might be others who are more inclined towards, the kind of craving, grasping side of it. um, but either way, that same sort of mechanism is at play, and so then, I mean, I think you're understanding at this point of what we'd say of like, yeah, right, you don't push it. It's like you try to, can you stay somewhat steady with a little bit of the practice, just because at some point there is like a faith, that the fear doesn't, you don't actually need to be afraid of the fear, um, and that you can kind of have a little bit of steadiness with it, but that there's total flexibility to just put the formal practice down for some period of time, or, to have it be kind of more touch in for just, shorter periods or whatever it is, the many ways that we encourage kind of managing it. Um, but my feeling is that you probably have some sense of that, at this point of like, okay, yeah, when to not force it, that you don't want to try to override the sensitivity with kind of recklessness. And yet maybe that sort of, there is always a place of like really of reflection around, is there really anything to be afraid of, and um, in this moment, and uh, can you observe what's happening in this moment, and that kind of constant sort of, checking in. It's like, well, actually at this, there might be fear, there might be kind of some trembling, but that isn't actually an overwhelming experience. The fear is of something that actually is not arisen, um, of an overwhelming experience that's not directly present. And so is that, um, how real is that? And if it starts to feel more real, then right, then we manage the kind of intensity of that. But to me, it makes sense, that this would sort of happen after some of your kind of more recent opening, and that you respect the resistance and you respect the contraction, and you go back to kind of pacing and in a different way. Michelle, any thoughts? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, can you hear me okay? Yeah. Okay. there are two teachings that the Buddha gave that I have always found the translations not that inspiring in terms of the languaging, but I think the meaning is inspiring. And so he taught about hiri and otapa, hiri, wholesome fear, and wholesome. These translations, like wholesome fear and wholesome dread, but the meaning of it is the fear of not being mindful that he called wholesome, and then the fear or the the dread of when we have, it's like, oh God, these translations, dread or shame of not been mindful. Um, but it's that feeling again of like understanding we've caused ourselves harm or others harm by when we haven't been mindful or caused ourselves suffering. That the meaning of it is that and I like the first one better because it kind of covers it all, and that fear of not being mindful is kind of what I think you might be touching into but not know. It's just the whiff of it feels right to me, and that emotion is information, like sound is information, sight is information, thoughts are information, fear is information, and the fear of not being able to be connected and mindful of it sounds like what you're describing to me, right? Yeah, and so that like that you there is some kind of refuge in the fact that Buddha taught that that's wholesome. I hope. Yeah, because you get why I hope, do you get the feeling of why that's wholesome?
Yeah, there's like definitely carefulness in it in itself. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as Jesse's saying, the pacing is everything. So we can't necessarily control how quickly we open. I'm like a classic example. It's just chunks just come off, and then you have to wait until the equanimity builds to come to balance. And Jesse's describing that too. It's like the opening, the coming to equanimity with how open we are. Yeah. So that rhythm that we're offering of courage and rest and courage and rest and courage and rest, how that might play out for you, you have to gauge if your system is saying, I want to break, brake. As Jesse says, we're going to say respect it. Of course, we'll say loving kindness, compassion, all the Brahma Viharas, but I kind of wonder if you've been maybe do formal practice 10 minutes and then get up and see what happens, or 10 minutes formal practice, go for a walk, 10 minutes formal practice, like try to find a way to not get too microscopic and too much you don't want too much purification happening too quickly, because the fear itself is not a problem. The experience of the fear isn't the problem. It's if we're getting too overwhelmed by it and can't be mindful of it. Or have loving kindness or compassion for it, or equanimity.
Yeah. I think I've put the brake for many years. And it feels, yeah, I'm exactly doing what you said. Like 10 minutes is like kind of the limit. like doing it myself, and I walk way more than I used to, and I kind of, I think I miss the sense of like tranquility that I used to kind
Mhm.
of discipline myself in, that I can't anymore. Um, I think I made peace with that a while ago, and I think it's surfacing again, that like, oh, I miss it. I miss being able to sit for a long time. I
Ah, really, I feel like, that this is such a cure for the attachment to that. I mean, that it's hard. I feel like this is something I've had to work so much in my own practice with, and it's like there's no better cure. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's because I've done so much teaching and know so many different types of people. There are the types that are the total opposite of this, Kate. So they'd be listening to you and they would give their eye teeth. No, really, they would be giving their eye teeth. Maybe that's too small. It like they would want the feeling of this kind of purification because it doesn't happen like that. There's like the opening is so slow. And so this type is like the equanimity is developing as they open. And it's like um, you need extreme time lapse photography to see it. And that's where that person will, that type will have doubt because one isn't even, there isn't a feeling of opening. Now I'm talking about extremes. And the other extreme that it's like a roller coaster. It's like two just opening, and then like, whoa, it's just everything you can. I kept looking for bottles of Elmer's glue just as a way to joke about it. It's a different type, right? But then I started to realize I had to find that kind of peace and calm and stillness everywhere else. If you saw the way I walk in my neighborhood, it's all about that. I'm not saying that's easy, but it's possible. I really feel like I've learned how to do that. But it's not that one doesn't miss or have nostalgia for those wonderful long periods of stillness. And it doesn't mean, I'm not saying that stayed consistent. There were times when there's times it's like rest courage, right? When the equanimity is back and the purification process is stable, but you don't want it to stop. Like I don't want that purification process to stop until I'm fully enlightened. And so none of our purification processes are that pretty or that controllable. Heaven forbid if that's controllable, right? We'd make a big mess of it with our aversion, attachment, delusion if we were trying to control this as well. So it's kind of learning how to navigate. And I mean, there were times when I'd walk around going, saying, "Poor me, poor, poor me, poor me. I can't do what I used to do now." Yeah. And that I think Jesse really nailed it where it's now, right? At this point in time, this is how it is. I haven't met many people that are on that side of things as I am. So I feel like I can get anybody through it because it's just the type. I bet you used to have times when long periods of time when it was calm and still, right? That's part of the type. U Pandita really helped me see that it was just attachment and that being with your moment to moment experience with everything, like it's like the Buddha taught sitting, lying, standing, walking for a reason. And if we're just attached to formal practice with sitting, whereas to me, everything's formal practice, daily life, it's the same, eating, whatever. It's like we're either like being there with it or we're not. And when we start getting attached to certain aspects of practice, it eventually is going to backfire because eventually you're going to have to give it up. So why not now? And it can be wise. I think it's great where you're at. Like it's great to go, okay, time to BRAKE. I guess it's BREAK. It's the same. It's fine. It's I'll say one more thing about it. This is how equanimity develops. So if you step on the gas and you're cowering in terror all day, if that's what's going to happen, why would you do that? Why not get some equanimity with the fear that is arising? And it will be less oppressive. And then the idea is that you'll get less afraid of this fear if you pace, as Jesse was describing. And I hope that everybody hears that, no matter what we're struggling with, you're working with it so that you're becoming less afraid of whatever it is that has great power over us. Kiri, that's your pep talk. There's all kinds of fun things to do.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Yeah. I'll keep going and doing what I'm doing. Just, managing slowly, however that is now.
I always wonder what the
It's
neighbors
not.
are thinking when I'm like standing, staring at something for a really, really long time because I'm just coming to stillness there, but I assume they have no idea what I'm doing, Anyway, I'm just giving you an example,
I'd be careful, Kate, saying like that it's happening slowly or that interpretation of it. I think that we don't really have that kind of perspective on our own path really often. And I think maybe just to sort of supplement some of what Michelle said, I think, so much of this path and this practice tends to focus on the Vipassana side of things, which is the kind of like letting go and the falling apart of things, the sort of deconstructive quality of Vipassana. And part of the reason is because that is that is part of what's so unique about it compared to other forms of meditation or other practices or other traditions, religions. So there's a reason why that's emphasized, because it's a different training that people might not get well in other places. But I it is like always important to recognize that like that the deconstructive side of it is supposed to be happening at the same time as the positive constructive side of the practice and the path. And that one very deeply embedded in the teachings and in the methods have a very real concrete understanding that the falling apart can only happen safely in the context of wholesome stability, right? If you look at the lineages that focus more on really splitting up, samadhi and vipassana, samatha, like that sense of those legitimate lineages that focus on like you're developing so much concentration to like an absorptive degree, and that you have kind of created still a constructed stability of the mind, but it feels very real in very beautiful mind states and very beautiful wholesome qualities, of kindness or whatever they might be. And that from that place of stability, that then there's a practicing of vipassana, of sort of letting go of that constructed experience and letting things fall apart and being able to observe it from that place of absorption. Now, there are many reasons why we don't teach that. There are many reasons why those are legitimate, good traditions. And there are various downsides to it as well. But that basic notion that like some basic level of stability is important, fundamental, in order to feel like that we can safely experience this sort of disintegration of everything, is still very important. And it may take different forms. It might not just be the form of concentration, but also just the form of sila, right? Of dana, right? The idea of our own ethical conduct or all of the goodness we do in the world. This sense of, as those being formal practice, kind of Michelle saying, those are real, concrete aspects of our path and of our practice, of like the doing of that which is good, the creating of stability of mind and body and of life, in order for the system to be sort of safe enough to actually trust that disintegration as a safe thing. And we're all just kind of part of what Michelle's kind of pointing to is we are all constructed in really different ways in terms of that orientation and that sort of spectrum that she mentioned. It's like if you're more on the side of like having a lot of facility, as you've described, of that sort of let it go, of this one, of the tranquility and the, that sense of like the dissolving of things is a kind of natural tendency. The shadow side of always that type of that orientation is always going to be the danger that you're describing, of like a lot of instability, a lot of volatility, and that you understand that as not being supportive actually is really important and fundamental, and that you trust your own system enough to not override that fear, to override that sort of sense of carefulness. That's like the most thing we ever ask for, like try to help people with, is trusting that sense of for how long in your practice life you go with the strength of that system that is able to drop in, that is able to really kind of like let go of things. And then at some point you're going to encounter the other side of that, which is like, needing to kind of temper that with this carefulness, with this pacing in a different way. Just as people on the sort of far other side of that that they're gonna have strengths starting off, and that those strengths are ultimately gonna also have to be dealt with for their shadow sides of like that solidity, that stability, that that is equally terrifying. I mean, I think that's the most important thing to recognize is like everybody's system is equally terrified of the truth, of the how totally unsubstantial things really are, and that we have different ways of relating to that truth and just sort of defending ourselves either through a kind of self-annihilation or like the insistence on this sort of composure, um, but that you're doing it, and that you're doing it carefully enough that you trust the pacing, even if it's frustrating at times, even if we get nostalgic about other things. Of course, no problem. And it doesn't mean, just again, it's like we don't know what's a year from now is going to look like. We don't know what 5 minutes from now is going to look like, but never mind 10, 20 years from now. And that sense of what's appropriate in this moment as being the biggest priority, and the greatest sensitivity is really important. Yeah. Oh wait, Michelle, before
Yeah.
I wanted to hear, were you saying eye teeth? People
Like
would give their eye.
eye teeth, like eye teeth.
Yeah.
It's an expression.
Oh,
Like
I don't know that expression.
you could say an arm and a leg.
Right. They'd give their eye teeth. All right, I like it. I never heard
Maybe
that.
that's particular to Framingham, Massachusetts. Who knows? Oh, that's great. Yeah. I think this is such an important discussion because everyone needs to understand that equanimity is equally difficult for everyone to access, right? So no matter what type you are, it's that equanimity that is gradual. It develops gradually. So if you're opening quickly, eventually the equanimity will catch up with how open you are. And if you're opening slowly, the equanimity is just developing slowly, right? Gradually. And usually the two types want to be like the other type. The grass is always greener, right? And the other fellow's yard. I mean, it's very funny, but you can't control it. And some people are more in the middle of the types, which is they look more equanimous. But don't forget that the human world is designed for fake equanimity. We're just really all good at pretending we're okay and looking like we're okay. You can't get through first grade with some kind of dignity without learning, or kindergarten, without learning how to act like you're okay, or you're doomed, right? You can, so that some of the practices after 12 years in college or whatever, after many, many years of finding that ability to function well enough in the human world, when you start kind of having a witness that can start looking at what's actually genuine versus how to manage, then everyone has to face this. And that's what's so beautiful. Equanimity is the most democratic factor of enlightenment. It's so democratic. And you can't fake it. What's so great is that we cannot fake it. We know when it's genuine or not. And we start, the more you practice, the more you can smell somebody else is faking it. So that's all good news.
Thanks, Kate. Oh, Margot, there we go. Let's see.
I'm coming back. I
Hi.
arose and passed away.
Right. That was very quick.
Becoming is very strong in me. I just want to say what you said about how important this discussion is. It's like you're hitting me, and I'm just wanting to say that yes, it's very important. And as somebody who's in the process of majorly falling apart, everything that you've been saying to Kate and Jesse, your instructions has been very helpful. So I just want to ask you to keep talking about what you're talking about. This sort of balancing of purification and backing off, and especially for those of us who are solidly in the territory of old age, sickness, and death.
Well, that's.
I'm just.
I
know, Michelle. I'm gonna. Margot, I'm muting you guys. For some reason, there's like a weird feedback loop. I don't know if you have like a. I don't know what exactly the audio. Are you both watching on different screens? No. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. I'm gonna mute you, and you can unmute yourself to respond. But for now, you're muted already. So, Michelle, it should be okay.
Okay. I think we both should keep duetting on this one because it is so important. It's what is hard to present well with many individuals is that this, at a certain point of sophistication of practice, it's going to work differently for different people. And so that's what can be tricky is we need to say experiment in terms of what might be helpful. So, for example, I'm not quite sure where it is that you are falling apart, right? Like it's hard to totally gauge the instruction with it because in a general way, again, Jesse was going in that direction where particularly for some people, we have to be so careful with how we say it because for some people, microscopic attention and a lot of protection, solitude, a lot of concentration, whether it is microscopic, but also if it's like big chunks of time, very protected, the system is going to feel safe enough to start opening. And if you've practiced a long time, there are the great description, the layers of the onion, right? So, and then it's often can seem like a bad joke, but there is a level where as things have been going well and stabilized, and one is getting identified and used to that stabilization, often another layer of purification is coming up, or you could say a layer of the onion is coming off. However you say it, there's a opening, but that opening is making space for the purification, which might mean doubt or anger, or it's simple in that it's something that we have difficulty or resistance to being mindful of. That's all this is. I mean, ha 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 ha, right? It's like all it is places that we The difficult ones are the ones we have learned to slam the door on. We're just like, we're not interested in this experience. And that's usually the kind of karmic knot purifications that require a very measured pacing. When you add old age, disease, and death into it, the identification with our bodies as being me or I or mine, that could be, it could not, that might not be what we would necessarily call a karmic knot, but fear of death can be a karmic knot. Are we hitting the nail on the head with that one? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Margot, do you want to say any more about particularly what feels evocative around this for you? And you have to unmute again.
Okay, thank you. Am I on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The falling apart is on the level of, like I think, Jesse, about your book and the notion of yogis being subversives or insurgents. And the falling apart is related to the realization at this stage of my life that I have been so deeply deluded until now, and including now, that I have built my life around concepts like agency and success and all that cultural loading. And what the Buddha is teaching is that's all an error. And so as I face the prospect of death, and yes, my body, the identification with my body is definitely a factor. It had been familiar, reliable, and predictable, and now it is no longer any of those. And I'm trying to get ready to let go of the identification. I'm working on, Sri Nisargadatta's I am not my body. I remind myself of that a lot. And it's hard. So there's a kind of collapsing of the view. Like I've read that right view is the cornerstone of the path, and I realize that I have not had right view all these years. I've had pieces of the infrastructure, but it has not been mature. And I'm not claiming that it is now, but at least I see that I've been horrendously deluded, and that's okay. I mean, that was my karma, and my karma is that I see that at this stage, and I also see that I don't have a lot of time, probably now to I don't even have the language for what I'm trying to convey. It's like there's a realization of the limitation that I'm facing, and an uncertainty and a doubt about how to practice. I know that I need to continue practicing. There's no doubt about that. So all of what you've been saying has been very helpful in this moment of confusion and terror.
Oops. I think that sounds awesome. I think that sounds great. I mean, really, it's so if you got rid of the part of feeling bad about your past delusions, it would be like it's very exciting, right? Of course. I mean, of course. all of us, like, we can only hope to have that experience of being like, oh my goodness, everything I have like built this around is, or this fundamental aspect of how I have so far constructed this path is not real or not true or lacking or whatever. And that then, because those are the things that are the hardest to see. I mean, those whatever they are, the views, the perspectives, the how what the things the way you framed it, which was very helpful, and kind of that the kind of cultural dimensions of that, the just sociological values or whatever, all the ways that we do it to it has to be both. You have to see that it's your karma, as you said, but it's you have needed that, right? That we are this idea of like we are braiding our path with delusion as much as wisdom, and that it's the tension between those things that ultimately creates the sort of structure of our path. And that doesn't mean that there isn't progress. If you're genuinely wrapping the wisdom back in and the loving kindness back in, then that it comes into relationship over and over again in a way that is transformative. But you can see why your system didn't let go of these things sooner, because it's confusing, it's scary, you're disoriented, you want to go forward, but it feels unclear how. I mean, you can see how much something like these certain views, or even things more subtle than even what you might call view, right? I think it's like part of what you're describing is these very subtle frameworks of our very baseline sort of interpretation of ourselves or the world. And so um, it's very powerful. It's very important. This type of kind of like that sort of free falling and not being certain is, as we've already talked about, it's part of the path. It's part of the practice. It's part of the maturing. And, often we will find we end up creating stability around some other more subtle level of fabrication and delusion. I mean, that's sort of how it works. And so to not be terrified of that, right? But to be interested and to see, where do we see it and where do we take responsibility for it, and how is that part of how it builds, also can help with the idea that you have to let go. What is, ready to let go. You don't have to. The letting go happens through insight, happens on its own. It's the natural result of insight. And so it's not to say that the phrases aren't helpful, right? Of reminding ourselves we are not ourselves. But it's you can't actually let go. Or if you're letting go, it's a volitional choice that's happening. It can be skillful, but it's also could be, greed, hatred, and delusion playing out there. True release happens just through insight, and insight just happens through observation. And so you don't even need to feel like you need to be letting go more, especially with the rug pulled out under you. I certainly wouldn't do that, And I just want to say the thing you mentioned in the book. It's because there was something about something in there that I think is very intense and powerful, of like, where are we intentionally provoking crisis? And where is that skillful and where is that reckless? And I think in terms of that whole metaphor of insurgency, right? There's a clear it's something to be very careful about, and also something to like that we understand is what we're doing, right? That we are actually driving the system towards a confrontation with the fallacy of the delusion, right? And that we seek to override that, right? We seek to override that through wisdom and love and all of these things. And yet to provoke crises when the system isn't actually able to manage the consequences of it, or maybe better said, a lot of times there's going to be we're going to get overwhelmed, and there will be a kind of, sort of this dialectical back and forth response to these moments of crises that we just have to be very careful. I mean, we have to understand this is what the practice is going to do. And kind of just like we were saying with Kate, right? It's like, so therefore sometimes you back up because you realize you're not trying to just throw your practice back into crises all the time. And yet there is something of recognizing that growth we do need to learn to be in relationship in uncomfortable terrain as well, and that is also part of it. And the voltage, the volatility of that discomfort, physically, emotionally, conceptually, is something that we're always having to be very sensitive to and take into account. And so in terms of where we say, hey, we're going to jump into this, and where do we run back into the hills until conditions are more stable for us to re-engage? So I think that metaphor is very valid. And to just kind of, as Michele was saying, there's always some testing to do, right? Because yes, we are different types. Yes, we are at different places in our practice. Yes, today our practice is one way and yesterday it was different. There's this to not get too fixed on like, well, I'm also this type of person, so I should always do this. We have to be careful of any kind of formula like that, but that you have a kind of a basic understanding of there are times to engage, there's times to retreat, and that may switch very quickly. And that we should not think of either as always right or always wrong, but that based on the conditions, and that it's okay if we miscalculate a little bit, that we go in when maybe we weren't ready to, and we learn what happens. We go out when we actually probably could have hung out a little more, and we feel maybe we missed an opportunity to learn, that there's always this sort of fluidity of strategy, that we feel is accessible is really important. But I really do feel like it's great, and to be careful, because it is a very, you don't want to override the insight and the profundity of how disarmed we feel, or how naked or how vulnerable we feel in our practice at times. And because there's something very important about that. It's very pure, even if it's disorienting. And we don't want to get lost in that either, right? There is always like, well, there's a new moment happening, and like whatever, our toe itches, or, there's just sensations arising, that have very little to do with our drama of it. Michele, do you have any more thoughts?
Yeah, like mm, yeah, I feel the same way as, am I here? It's not echoing, is it okay? Okay. When you started talking that what the Buddha taught, like house builder, house builder, I see you. House builder, I see you. Right? Like that's what you're saying. House builder, I see you. And then the Buddha said, I will build your house no more. It's so beautiful. It's one of my favorite descriptions of liberation. It's just like, yeah, um, there has to be some kind of ripeness. You've done so much practice. There's a ripeness for seeing that. And it's so hard to find a language that's helpful, but the little me, of course, the little me is going to get terrified. The little me's been like building this house your whole life. Like, and the little me's going to go, oh, like, wait a minute. We're not going to just disassemble this house, right? Like there's a process that goes on where you start to see the little me needs a lullaby, right? Like you don't want to just kick the little me and just say, okay, thanks a lot, buddy. I'm done with you. Shut up. Like stop it. Stop. You can't. That doesn't work. Sometimes it takes like seeking out. What's that one? The Rainbow Connection by the Muppets. That's like a great one. You find something that is really the opposite of what you're thinking you might need, right? Because you have these parts of you that are like that's so wise there, and another part is going, no, actually, right? And part of equanimity is being able to attend to both of those skillfully. You have to learn how to develop the skill, because if you try to kick that terror out, kick the can, it's going to get more terrified. If you go, oh boy, terror, of course, what do I need what does that need right now? That's part of not building the house. It's just taking care of that structure until it's not needed. It's just not needed. It's okay. I mean, it's like
No. Yes?
You're unmuted.
yeah.
Okay. Oh, our internet connection is weak. So can you hear?
Mhm.
Okay. So I guess the challenge is believing. This is where the doubt is. The doubt is believing that I can live in this world without a house.
You already are. You already are the house. Oh, sorry. You already are.
It should be good now.
Okay. You already are. We're all
You
of
already
us
are. You already
we
are.
already are
I'm done.
living without the house. The house is imaginary. Totally imaginary. I mean, what's so funny is that it's that appearance of the fear that's the house. There's no house. It's just temporary moments of identification with fear. It's the identification with the fear that's the house. There's no house. But I think it's really, I gotta bring this up. I just think, I think this is the 15th year, the Iron Man goes by the bottom of the hill where we live. And this year it's women. And they've already done their swim. And then when they go by this place, it's the bike ride. After the bike ride, they do a marathon, right? I mean, I find it so foreign to my natural capabilities of walking. But like, okay, so Ironman, and most of the time, well, Jesse and I have gone down and given out Gatorade or water or stuff, but this year we didn't. And it was much more organized, went down. And often we go when the people who are going to win or close to winning come by. But we went down sort of in the middle where I would say probably the more normal normal Ironmen are going by, but they're not like looking like those people that are like whizzing by. And in all these years, I have never seen what I saw. And it's like there's this woman who came by and she stopped her bike. Usually they're, you're trying to throw a bottle at them, and they're often missing. So bottles are flying everywhere and it's like crazy, right? But this lady stopped her bike and looked very vulnerable. And she gently asked for help, like putting water in her water bottle. And it was so vulnerable and sweet. And I started crying. I was just so moved. I was so moved that this woman like was that uh, open and not acting so macho. Like it was so moving to me. But I mean, also I'm very open, so I started crying. Nobody else was crying, right? Like it didn't like have that effect. But I'm trying to say something here because then we tend to at least listen to the whole thing, right? And listen to the people who are then starting the marathon and the marathon. And this woman was ahead the whole time. I mean, she was ahead with the
A
sweat. Well,
different
maybe,
woman.
yeah, yeah. This is a different woman. Oh, yeah, clearly this woman was never going to be close to the front. Um, but there was another woman who was way ahead the whole time. And somebody else bit the dust. Now, Jesse saw more than I did, so I might be missing something here. But generally speaking, this lady was ahead, 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 ahead. And she had how much left did she have? Yeah.
2 miles.
It was
This is
still too much. It
there was
was
still
still
2 miles.
2 miles?
Yeah, but
Oh,
still, this is after 3 miles of swimming, 106 miles of biking, and then a full marathon minus 2 miles. Yeah.
24 miles. Okay. Yeah. So she starts wobbling and she's still trying to run and she's just wobbling. And the people that are narrating it are, they're Ironmen, right? And they start laughing. And they're like, "Oh, she's struggling. Oh, great." And they're laughing. And it's like, I feel like I'm from another planet, right? Like, I just feel like, how could they be laughing? But this happens every year. I forget every year something happens like this. And they're laughing and they're like, but they want people to be in pain, like, and struggling and pain in a way that we're so happy for you, Margot, because you're experiencing this deep liberation pain. Like the the joy that we feel for you because you're willing to go through that level to be free. But you can hear what we're saying is that that house is not real, right? But when I see something like yesterday where it's like, oh, whoa, it's like what are people willing to put their bodies through to win? And I get it. It's a whole world and it's competition and it's wonderful. Um, but there's a level of pain in it that is very foreign to me. Like, why? Better to do a 3-month retreat and be in agony, right? Because you'd be not, that kind of practice of running or like that kind of Ironman, pretty soon you can't do it, right? You can't maintain that level. And I hope I'm not trying to put it down or it's like I can see we go down every year. We support it. It's a very happy um it's a big deal on this island. So I'm not trying to put it down, but I'm trying to say that we value and respect the level of courage it takes to unravel the delusion. and you pace it just like, wonderful.
Like an Iron Man. You're all Iron Man.
Yeah, like stop and have somebody pour you some water. Like, whoa, wow. She got a little far behind, but okay. And yeah, the last thing I would say is, Margot, this is timeless. Like it's like when the stakes get high as you get older, actually, you've done a lot of practice. It's not like liberation is based on time. It's based on wisdom.
So thank you both very much. This means a lot. It's very, very helpful.
Marie, Michelle, we can do a quick.
Yeah.
I think. See, can you unmute there? Hi.
Great. Yes. Hi. It's very quick. It's purely. We'll see, but so as far as I can tell, it's very just a logistics based. I was looking for your talk, Michelle, from last week to be able to rewatch it and listen to it on YouTube, and I didn't see it posted. So I was wondering if it was going to be posted, and also if today's conversation would also be posted, because they are both really important and resonate to me, and I'm sure to other people. So that's the question.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, great. So yeah, sorry, I didn't do last week's until this morning, so it is up
Oh,
now.
okay.
Yeah, yeah, so you can find it, and then I will do this week's, hopefully by this evening. Yeah.
No pressure.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Love you both. Yeah.
Thank you. Mm.
It's so inspiring, this Sangha and our time together. Thank you for your practice.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Mm.
Take care, and we'll see you next Sunday, hopefully. Keep on going.